The Empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139. The month of February is all about Valentine's Day. Big heart-shaped boxes filled with delicious candy. What if we, the Patriots, hijacked Valentine's Day and instead made it about human liberty and individual empowerment? I'm all about human potential. I'm all about the individual being empowered. The establishment is the opposite. That's why they spike our water with fluoride and GMO, estrogen mimickers, and the rest of the garbage. InfoWars is striking back in the month of February with Human Empowerment Month. How we can come together and win the human race. And to celebrate the kickoff of Human Empowerment Month, we're slashing prices on InfoWarsLife.com products like Super Male and Super Female Vitality. The sale is only running for the month, 20% off, and there's a lot of other powerful specials at InfoWarsLife.com. InfoWarsLife.com, celebrating human potential in the month of February. Visit InfoWarsLife.com to find this special and many others in the month of February. Again, InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139.
What disaster is so powerful, it unleashes a chain of mass pandemics, economic meltdowns, and violent food riots, all at the same time? NASA has already set the countdown timer, and right now the 21st century apocalypse is less than 13 months away. Former CIA Director James Woolsey says 2/3 of U.S. population could perish. In a matter of seconds, the world as we know it will cease to exist. The world's economy will be wiped out. Mass riots will follow. Ancient diseases will reemerge. How will you shield yourself and your loved ones from this upcoming apocalypse? Go to darkestdays.info to find out proven methods of protecting yourself, your loved ones, and even your entire community when this worst-case scenario unravels. That's darkestdays.info. darkestdays.info. Go there before this life-saving information becomes unavailable to the large public. Go to darkestdays.info now.
Zach, this is Crystal Palace. NORAD has declared DEFCON 3. Scramble all alert aircraft.
I repeat, scramble all alert aircraft.
The Whopper spends all its time thinking about World War III.
Target selection complete. Time on target sequence complete.
22 Typhoon-class submarines departing Petropavlovsk, turning southbound at Nordkap, bearing 095 degrees.
Radar reports 2 unknown tracks are penetrating the Alaskan air defense zone.
From the front lines of the information war.
Flush the bombers, get the subs in launch mode. We are at DEFCON 1.
Are you prepared to destroy the enemy?
You betcha!
Defending the Republic from enemies, foreign and domestic.
We'll keep control, but we'll keep it here at the top where it belongs.
3, 2, 1. Impact.
Shall we play a game?
How about global thermonuclear war?
Live from the Infowars.com studios, it's Alex Jones.
All units confirm weapons targeted and ready, awaiting launch codes.
We are in launch mode.
Do you really believe that the enemy would attack without provocation?
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
We're in. Russians are still denying everything, sir. We have a Soviet submarine launch detection.
I wish I didn't know about any of this. I wish I was like everybody else.
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the worldwide broadcast. We have John McCain this week and last week calling for open U.S. military forces backing NATO to engage the Russian rebels in eastern Ukraine. I'm not Ukrainian, I'm not Russian, but I do know the history of the region. Both sides have been killing each other for 500 years. The Russians have controlled Crimea for 500 years. It's basically like Mexico trying to take Texas or something. There are political interests that are basically running this country into the ground. Here's the headline: Elizabeth Warren opposes congressional meddling of audit the Fed bill. It would appear that the powers that be are getting nervous. That's Zero Hedge up on Infowars.com. And joining us to cover the waterfront is Dan Kofall. He's a talk show host out of Dallas. I've been on his broadcast many times. He's been with us out there at our In the Fed rallies in Dallas to cover it for Dallas radio. And I wanted to get him on our broadcast today to look at the world economy and to break down from different angles what his sources are saying and what he thinks is coming as well. Dan, thank you so much for coming on.
No, man, I appreciate the invitation, Alex. Thank you so much.
Where do you want to go first? There's so much to get into.
Well, first, I just want to say that I've listened to you for years, and that you do more good for the American people in your one show than all the rest of the media combined. I know you don't like people just, praising you like that, but it's true. I listened to you for years. Long story short, I got into radio in 2007, great extent because of your show and what I had heard. A friend of mine is the chief economist of the Federal Reserve. He and I would have lunch, argue back and forth. I was so right. He finally got so upset with me. He said, "I'm going to find a station to put you on," and the rest was history. And my specialty was always economics and what's going on in the world. So that's kind of how I have, but I have it all because of you.
Well, Dan, please don't talk about me anymore. I'm just glad that you and so many other people have been spurred because of this broadcast to start your own radio shows, because I know you've gotten pretty good ratings up there in Dallas, been on several different stations, and we salute you for that work you're doing covering these issues. Where do you want to go first? Because, obviously, the economy's not as good as they're claiming. What is your view on the state of the U.S. and world economy in general?
Well, here's where I start out, and it's the fact that people talk about how the economy is recovering. They talk about all these wonderful numbers, employment numbers, and everything. It's rosy, and none of it's rosy. I believe you cannot possibly have a good analysis if you're working off of bad facts. We're intentionally being fed bad facts by the Federal Reserve, the BEA, the BLS, all the people that give us these key numbers. These numbers aren't anything of what they look like. The inflation numbers, it's impossible to assume there's a 1.5–2% inflation number. I know you and I share a friend in John Williams at Shadow Stats, and his numbers are spot on. So what you've got is you've got people in the investment world making decisions, and they're developing their whole narrative off of horrible financial numbers. I'll give you one in particular, Alex. I know you were joking about this before the show. Something called the Baltic Dry Index. It's such an obscure thing, but it's so meaningful to the whole world. It measures how many goods are being shipped back and forth between countries around the world. It has never been, this is almost 40 years this index has been around. It's never, ever been lower. That means never has there been less product moving around the world than there is right now. That's a horrifying number, but you don't see it anymore.
Is that why the Chinese are selling steel at cheaper than it is to produce?
Yeah, and also another good indication is when you look at China and the amount of electricity usage that they're using. That's a very good indication of how strong an economy is, and their usage of electricity has been steadily declining, not growing. You can't have that in a growing economy.
So what is the real state of the economy globally then, in your view?
All right, you touched on derivatives, and I think the next conflict in this world, even though it looks horrible in Ukraine, nuclear weapons, maybe not, it's the financial world where the next major conflict will occur. We talk about derivatives. There's somewhere between 1 and 2 quad, which is you know what that is? It's 1,000 trillion in derivatives out there. 25 trillion roughly linked to the euro. 25 trillion roughly are linked to oil and gas. If you have oil dropping to $20 a barrel, you will effectively make roughly $25 trillion worth of derivatives. Whereas if Greece repudiates that and the EU will have effectively made the euro close enough so those derivatives become worthless. Well, either one of 25 trillion, and that roughly represents 1/3 of the world total GDP. Well, imagine, Alex, if you make $100,000 a year, and that's your income, that's GDP. So now imagine that all of a sudden, $20,000, let's say, what would that be? $20,000 out of that just disappears. Your life would change, everything would change. And that's what the world is facing right now. And it's the domino effect.
I agree. I want to get into that, but your Skype started deteriorating, so we're going to reconnect with you, Dan, right now up in Dallas. We're here in Austin, Texas. If you just joined us, this is the Alex Jones Show. And while we're reconnecting with Dan, I'm going to air this clip. CNBC anchor stunned. There is no economic recovery. Investor launches into breathless rant about real financial system. This is one of the chief financial strategist, Rizzuto, a managing director of MIZUHO Securities, which is a pretty big firm. And this is not just him saying this, but John Williams, the list goes on and on. They're all pretty much saying the same thing. Here is that clip.
If you look at the domestic economic conditions, I hear all this discussion about the U.S. economy accelerating. If you look at the GDP number that we're probably going to have in the revised report for the fourth quarter, combine that with the negative report in the first quarter, average growth for all of 2014 is about 2.3%. Fourth quarter over fourth quarter growth will be about 2.2%. That's really where the economy's been growing over the last 5 years. There is no acceleration in underlying economic activity. Nominal GDP growth is running approximately around 4% where it's been growing. Now, we've had a nice pickup in employment in the last couple of months. There's no doubt about that. That's squeezing productivity. The squeeze in productivity is not going to be allowed to go on very long by corporate America, who needs very strong earnings to justify the multiples that they're getting in the stock market. So either we're going to have a decline in the earnings numbers, or we're going to have multiples be maintained by stronger earnings, which is going to mean a slowdown in employment going forward. And I think that's really going to be the limiting factor on the Fed, as well as the deflationary forces that are taking place overseas that we could also import on a stronger dollar.
All right, that's Steve Rizzuto on CNBC. And then the anchors are stunned. You can watch the full clip. There's a couple more minutes left at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. You dovetail this attitude with Elizabeth Warren, who's opposing congressional, quote, meddling. Well, Congress controls the power of the purse, so shouldn't they be able to audit the so-called Federal Reserve? What do you say about that, Dan?
Absolutely. The Federal Reserve is it's a one-man show. It's loyal to nobody. And never once, by the way, in the history of the Federal Reserve, have they ever said America or Americans are their priority. It's always been the banking system of America or the banking system of the world is their priority. They're not. We don't even exist on their list of priorities.
Well, that's right, and most of the banker bailout money ended up going to foreign banks. I mean, we could have given, in the bailout, $30,000 to every family in America. We would have had inflation, but at least it would have done something for the economy. Instead, it just went into derivatives, which you started getting into the domino effect when your Skype cut out of derivatives if they get triggered. From your research, I know you have a lot of top experts on your show, and you're a pretty smart guy in your own right. How big are the derivatives overhang, and where do you expect the next bubble to pop?
Well, the derivatives overhang, you can't really get an exact number. It's somewhere between 1 quadrillion and 2 quadrillion, and roughly 25 trillion relate to oil, and another 25 trillion relate to the euro. So if Greece pulls out of the EU, that will significantly affect the euro, and it could make $25 trillion of derivatives become worthless, and the other side make it come due. And same problem with oil. So we're right on the cusp of having something that is completely unmanageable, and yet you're hearing these rosy numbers, and it just isn't rosy.
You know, Dan, my grandmother's brother worked at the Dallas Federal Reserve once he got out of the Navy, and we would have debates about the Federal Reserve. But before he died 6-7 years ago, he listened to the show, my Uncle Billy, and he said, Billy Pope was his name, he said, you know, you really are right about this, and a lot of people in the Federal Reserve are upset. So it's not just like the Federal Reserve's been monolithic